It's escalator use in the community. And it's interesting how we got involved in this study. I was involved in some other projects, and somebody who was on the Elevator Safety Foundation approached me because they have a program they had been using for a number of years, and they wanted to test the program out. Previously, they had tested it out with a knowledge-based assessment. In other words, they gave children a pre- and post-test before receiving the program. Typically, by the way, this program is given in grade 2, and children will come in, they'll get the program, it's in the classroom, it's a very small chunk of time that they require. They provide the foundation provides all of the materials to the school if the school is participating in this program. And before or after, there was a knowledge change. The question they wanted, it became very behavioral. And what they wanted to know is, are we making any difference with this program? They realized there's a difference between knowledge and practice and behavior, essentially. Do the children actually change their behavior? Do they behave in a safer manner when they actually use the escalator in terms of the safety rules that are being taught? And so they approached us to do this, and we went through a period of about almost a year, I think, discussing alternative ways of doing it. And a lot of ways that people typically will do it would be to simulate this, taking classes to, all kinds of problems. The teacher was involved, the teacher is there. What does the teacher do when somebody's not being unsafe? Ignore the behavior? Ethically, getting this through, there could be some problems here. Of course, the most sensible way to do it, the way we recommended is our first choice, and the one they took, and the reason it took a year, as I said, what we really need to do is measure behavior in the natural community, in the environment. Pick some escalators in each community. We'll get some observers. We got those for the school systems, by the way. We hired some people. The superintendent had some people just finished university, so we trained them up to record and so on. Well, you can go out there and you can measure in the community escalator use without having anything to do with what went on in the school. Just basically you do this during a baseline period. Then you put it in with a multiple baseline in one community first, community-wide. I'm going to go into more detail later. Then put it into the second community-wide, and see whether what you did in the school actually shows up in the community. When I say by community-wide, put it in all the schools in that school district, in that whole school system. And you can't pick a city like Chicago. Why can't you pick a city like Chicago? It's too big, and it's too sprawled out, and where do the boundaries begin and where do they end, and how do you get everyone involved? So that can't be done. And you have something else, another condition. So it's got to be a discrete area that can't be sprawled, that's kind of concentrated, and you can hit all the schools. But you can't just hit all the schools. This program is being given all over the place. I was amazed to know how many schools are receiving this program throughout the United States and in Canada. You need to have virgin communities that have never been touched by this program. They have to basically be, because otherwise you have the confounding variable in your baseline. So we had to look, we described what you needed, what kinds of communities, and it was up to them to find those communities for us, to look around and to interest some communities who hadn't done this before, who met those criteria. We didn't even approach them until they approached them. We looked at the demographics, and we really did a very careful analysis of demographics for every one of these systems before we actually implemented the program. Now, the target of the program itself is called Safety Rider. It's second grade children. They provide all the hard copy materials, which is teacher's guide, poster, video, test, stickers. This is supposed to be changed. It's not an interactive video. Just let me check something here, because this is the right one. I'll know in a minute. And I don't think so. I'm going to wing it. I made a few changes last night, but it's too late to change now. It won't be a problem anyway. Okay. Actually, they have a workbook. And the workbook reinforces the key messages in the program. And the workbook is to be, part of the assignment is to take this activity workbook home to the parents, and part of the assignment is to do this with the parents. And the parents then, next time they go in, are supposed to follow, work with the kids in following the rules. I think they initial this, it comes back, and the kids get a sticker when they do this, and all the kids in the grade 2 get a sticker. Now, this program's reached not 3.5, 4.3 million children. Is that correct?
4.1.
4.1 million children, and it's delivered to over 450,000 children a year. So it's a fairly big program that the foundation has. Of course, this is all funded by the various corporations that produce escalators, elevators, and moving walkways, because this is what is covered by the particular program that they're doing. And the program has received awards from the American Public Transportation Association. It's got the Award of Honor of the National Safety Council and the American Society for Association Executives. So you have, it's been well recognized by people. It's a nice program. The question is, does it change behavior? We know that it increased information and knowledge, but the question is, does it increase behavior? To increase behavior, you need to have the right circumstances to assess that. The community requirements we had, as I mentioned earlier, is no prior participation in the Safety Rider program. That's essential. Relatively isolated from suburban sprawl and high numbers of visitors. If there's lots of visitors, there will be children in the malls that you're looking at, you're going to have problems. So you need to make sure. The two places we picked, geographically quite separated, Tallahassee, Florida, and St. John, New Brunswick. They both fit that. If you looked at a map, if you looked at a population, you see that they're really concentrated areas. They have one school district that serves everyone in the area, so it's a perfect place to evaluate this type of a program. Approximately 11,000 6 to 11-year-old children in Tallahassee and 4,000 in St. John, which is a smaller community, received the program. And children's behavior was assessed on mall escalators before and after the program was delivered to determine if the behavioral changes resulted. Now, we needed to make sure we couldn't discriminate. How we can discriminate whether these kids had the program in terms of, we can't be certain, right? They could move in from another area, but we know we had to cover the whole school, but how do we know if it's a second grader or not? I don't want to ask kids when they're going on the escalator, are you a second grader? That's going to contaminate the study quite a bit. So we decided upon using two strategies. One is to say, it's normally given to grade 2s, let's give it to grade 1s through grade 5s. All at once. So they sent out tons of material to cover the whole system, which is easy because that's what they do. And they sent those out. The other thing that we had to do is still figure out who do we get. So we put little marks near the escalator that our observers could see. And we judged the height. We went to the guidelines. You have the pediatricians when you come and bring your kid in. And we used the height, and we said, hey, let's use the percentiles. What are the tallest grade primaries? We'll exclude them. And what are the shortest grade 5s? We'll exclude them to a very narrow percentage. So only a small percent of our sample could creep in based on our height that would be the wrong age. So that's how we did it. And we observed their behavior on the mall escalators before and after the program was delivered to determine if the change occurred. And we used a multiple baseline because we had two communities. So we had two malls employed in the study. The baseline data were collected for several weeks at both target sites prior to delivery of the Safety Rider program to provide a benchmark. And of course, we did it in a staggered fashion. One community received the program before the other. And there was some provision for follow-up. We did a follow-up at 6 weeks to determine if the effects persisted over the 6 weeks. And here are the behaviors we looked at. And I have definitions for all of these, obviously, but I'm just not going to go into all the detail on that. Stepped onto and off the escalator carefully. This had to do with where they're looking and a whole bunch of little criteria. Hold escalator handrail with an adult's hand. Otherwise, one target that didn't change, although it was fairly high. Stand facing forward in the direction of travel. Stand clear of skirt and balustrade. Not have untied shoes or loose clothing on entry. sit down on escalator steps, or not sit down on escalator steps while riding. This is an earlier version, so I'm careful about reading it. Carry the packages, by the way, we threw out completely. We did this over the Christmas period, and what was happening was we were getting an ascending period in both communities, packages and decreases that were related to shopping that would swamp anything that we were doing. And so we took that out. And remain on one step after entering the escalator. And the thing there, of course, is that not to walk up, and you see kids doing this all the time, walking down the up escalator and running up the up escalator. And, you're not supposed to do that. Those aren't safe behaviors. So that's one of the other targets that we picked out. Methodology, we had 2 research assistants in each mall, discreetly observing the children from the time each one stepped on the escalator until they stepped off. And of course, we got the permission of the malls to have our observers there. They didn't wear anything to identify themselves, and they tried to, we had a lot of reliability checks that looked like they were talking to each other. It worked pretty well. And again, the height of the children was used to determine whether they were within the selected age group. We observed children between 45.5 inches and 52 inches tall by the marks. Observation sessions typically lasted an hour to an hour and a half when children were likely to be there. This is really important. Obviously, we aren't going to be there during the school hours. We're there after school and on weekends. And reliability checks were scheduled each week to verify the accuracy of the reported behavior. And they did occurrence. Inter-observer agreement on the occurrence of each of the behaviors. Follow-up survey of children within the height range was administered after we finished the follow-up. And there we showed them, we found out what school they attended. We picked, this is a kid we would have observed, and then we asked them, instead of recording their behavior, this person fit within our range. This is a person I would have observed. We asked them, the people, these were young women, asked what school they attended. They identified themselves, so they were doing a survey. We would take 30 seconds, what school do you attend? And of course we wanted to know there is, and what grade are you in? So did they get the program? And the second thing that we did to check on that is did they get the program? To show the parents the workbook and ask the parents, have you seen this? And oh yeah, and they need to tell us that the other parent, my child, brought this home. They say, no, I'm not familiar with that book. So we had basically, I don't remember the exact wording, we had a way of assessing, in a sense, probing at least, whether they received the program. We wanted to know that. And I'll talk a little about that data, though I know it's not on this, I don't think it's on this version of the PowerPoint. Fortunately, I can remember it, so I'll be able to go from there. Here are the results from Tallahassee, and if you look at this, you can see there's some changes. From a cost effectiveness point of view, I would say these are small changes, but they're very, very important changes when you look at it, because if you take a look at walk in the direction of travel, it's a pretty big reduction in the bar there, and from baseline, this is the Tallahassee data. Walking against, it's not significant. This is a significant change, statistically significant change. Safety exit, it's a pretty big change, really, when you look at that. Of course, that's significant to 001 level and better. And this is, for example, avoiding the skirt, facing forward, and so on. I'll show you the data from St. John, and you see very similar effects. This is a very powerful one again. Walk in direction of the travel, you get a pretty big effect there. Safety exit, avoiding the skirt, facing forward. Holding the handrail, just nothing much happening on that particular one, but safely entering was non-significant because it's small. If you pull it between the two, you get a significant effect. When you pull that data, you have a larger sample and it becomes significant. I thought I'd show you some ABA-style graphs. And again, this version doesn't have all of the means set on, but And I even distrust, well, I suspect that they're correct. This is a portion facing ahead. Again, there's no baseline mean down there. This is the proportion not standing clear of sides. And this is proportion walking on the escalator. And this is the portion not stepping off carefully. And the follow-up data were pretty good too. The last couple of data points of the follow-up that we did, and it seemed to be pretty much in line with the rest. So what do the results indicate? Oh, by the way, I was thinking about this. You have this effects you can see on each of the graphs, but there's overlap. So how do you get rid of the overlap? You sum it in some way. So I didn't look at this until last night. They didn't have a graph and it's not on here. But one of the things you can note is the number of people violating multiple rules, or the number of people, the mean number of rules violated, kind of sums across these. And so the effect is more clear in terms of overlap when you do that, because you have all these effects. And then, so this data needs to be massaged in a number of different ways in order to see exactly what's going on. When you do this, it doesn't the overlap that you see when you just look at each rule individually, but when you note that each rule has an effect, you realize there's a way of looking at that where you see the overall effect on all rules, you see a bigger effect, at least bigger in terms of less overlap, right? Size will be the same, right? But the overlap will be reduced. We had consistent differential results from both cities indicating clearly observable behavioral improvement after the program was delivered. Of the 10 measures, 6 showed significant decreases in violations, 3 showed non-significant decreases in violations, and 1 showed a non-significant increase in violation, that's holding the handrail. And we don't understand that. And that's something that's useful to the foundation, because they can start to say, well, what can we do to improve holding the handrail? What can be done to modify the program to make it more effective in that particular item? What do you do? And the survey results indicated that 64% of the children could identify the program materials and said they saw it at school. 42% of the parents accompanying the children also confirmed they saw the materials. And it gave us some useful information. We noticed that there were a few schools where none of the kids saw the materials. So we checked afterward, and it turns out that school did not administer the program. They're contaminating our treatment effect, because we assume they all had the program. We also found there were some private schools in the community. And those kids didn't get the program either, because we only gave it to public school children. So it turned out that I think it's about 17% in Tallahassee, and I forget the number in St. John, of the children we probably sampled based on this survey, but that's typical of what persisted throughout the period, didn't receive the program at all. So the effects you see are likely actually larger since they're being carried by the ones who received the program. At least that's, you got multiple baseline design, and the changes took place when we introduced the treatment, so it seems reasonable to assume that that's the case, that the effect of the program is actually larger than indicated by our data, because there was no way. If we had known that, we could have gotten the product if we had actually gone out and validated. All this had to happen fairly quickly, probably right after the week. It was all done at once. We had confirmed that each school had done it. We might have been able to get the superintendent to get that other school to do it, hold on our data collection until we had all of them in place, and we didn't have some schools that didn't receive the program. So that's one of the issues. So that's why we're saying that if you factor in the number of children who hadn't taken the program, you can do a little math on it, but you're only doing a little math on it and say, well, probably the effect is actually this large, not that large in each of the bars. You can make some changes, but the real way to do it is to do it experimentally, to do it right. So we're not going to show you those graphs, those hypothesized graphs, because they're just hypothetical, and they're not actual. But this suggests to us anyway that that's the case. So that's basically the talk I was going to give this morning. I think I probably went through it really quickly, but I'm certainly open to questions. Yes?
How long ago did you conduct this study?
several months. The baseline, they went out several times a week when our observers were free to go, and we thought there would be children there. They weren't there every day. And so I think the initial baseline might have been about a month. And then the treatment went in the first place, and then the baseline continued until we had a nice clear period of observing, and we wanted to get Christmas out of the way in the middle there, so they have to appear in the middle, so we continued with some more before we introduced them in St. John. So that was sometime later in January, and then sometime in maybe March or so, we did the follow-up after having done maybe a month of data collection after in St. John, and continued the Tallahassee data lines, data path. We then went and did the follow-up about 6 weeks later.
Was that this past year, in 2004?
Actually, that would be, I think so, yes, it was. That would be in January. It started in 2003, finished in 2004. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, Stephanie, are you ready?
Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Were they satisfied with your findings? Because they wanted more proof other than just knowledge base, correct?
Yeah, I think they were very pleased because I have to tell you this. Louis and I both, when they asked us about this, indicated we tried to help. We know they wanted to demonstrate an effective program from a behavior analysis point of view. Okay, I understand that video modeling can be effective. I understand that parental involvement in getting them, all of the components that were in there could be effective. But Louis and I said, really, if you want to be certain, there are certain other things you should do. There's a big gap between what you're teaching and when they actually get to practice what they're being taught, and prompts at the escalator which bridge that and suggested a number of different strategies that I thought could increase the effectiveness of the program and increase the likelihood that they got good results. And I said, we can't guarantee you're going to get good results, and I felt badly doing the project for them because I talked to a few other behavior analysts as well, and they all thought that this project program probably would not produce a measurable, detectable change in behavior. And so I felt badly that here we're going ahead and do this for them if we can't help them in regard to improving the program from a behavioral perspective. And so we were very surprised at the effect. They were very pleased with the behavioral effects that they had. I mean, you look at that and you say, well, some of them, you didn't eliminate any of these problems. No, but you're implementing it across a whole bunch of kids, and it's only taking a very small portion of one school day, and you got fairly big changes in that sense, very cost-effective changes in behavior. So, you always look at the magnitude of the change by how much you have to invest to get that change. And so they were very delighted, actually. They were worried that they had a knowledge change. They were quite skeptical in terms of their own program. They worried about the program. They thought, well, we have knowledge change, but maybe it doesn't change the behavior. So the answer to the question, they were very pleased with the changes. Yeah. And I was pleased, too, that I could give them some results that were positive, although it wasn't my expectation was not that it would do that well. It surprised me. In fact, when the first one came in, Louis and I were talking, I said, Louis, there's an effect here. I was putting some of the stuff on the spreadsheet. It looks like there's an effect here. There's something there. I bet it'll turn out. Certainly at a significance level if you use statistical approach, which I normally don't use so much. But even looking at some of the data paths, I realized, well, there's an overlap. It looked like something was happening. Good. Okay.
Hi.
University. Today I'm going to talk about choice behavior, walking, how we always want to save steps, conserve our energy. I'll start with a summary of kinds of people and illustrate.
One of the things that I thought is that it would be useful to prompt the behavior at the escalator itself as a bridge. And I have a picture of an astronaut.
Yes, I see that. Maybe I can get your definition.
Just, so one of the things I was thinking is that would enhance the program would be to use prompts. So I was concerned maybe it wouldn't be able to bridge the gap between actually receiving the program and going from the program to the escalator. It would be a duration of maybe a week or so into being there before the children actually get to use the escalator. There isn't a chance to put into practice what they're learning in the classroom. So if you have a little picture of the mascot and some of the rules right there by the escalator to be a bridge, to serve as a bridge, I thought that would be very effective. And what the foundation said was, look, we have a program though. We're using it now, we're using it extensively. We need to know how it works as it is. Does it work as it is? So I thought that was very reasonable, so that's what we decided to test. The program without any additional trimmings of any kind, just a basic education program that goes into the classroom. And again, I thought that it would be all effective. I was suggesting maybe there would be a 6 or 7% increase, and perhaps even less. You know, I didn't know. And it turns out that we got increases of 25, 40% in a lot of our target behaviors. And for a straightforward education program that reaches large numbers of children, these are major changes in behavior and very cost effective. So I think for that type of a program, I haven't seen results that large of any program of this type before this one. This is probably the largest change that I saw, and certainly nothing that I would have predicted beforehand. That was not what I anticipated. But it's good. Anything else?
Okay, that's it, great.
Yeah. I think the generality of the finding is likely very good because we had two communities that were very different. One in Florida, one in Canada, two different countries. And the program actually produced very similar results in both communities. So I think likely the generality is probably pretty good. Of course, I can't say it. It probably will work in a lot of other communities all through the United States and Canada. But if you had a population that had very seriously, very, very different demographics, there's the possibility there that more data would be needed. But our study can only do so much. And I think we try to, as much as possible, improve the generality, but not picking two communities close together by picking them from different regions and demonstrating similar results across those two regions. I think we did do a lot to increase the to demonstrate that the effect is fairly general. And therefore, you should predict that it would probably occur in a lot of communities.